email at support, SUPPORT, @xbrl.us. And we'll do our best to get you back online. And if you have questions as we go through the program, please key them into the Q&A link that you see on your screen, and we'll take those questions as we go. So with that, I want to introduce our speakers first, and we're really happy to have with us today Minna Rintala. Minna is head of Real-Time Economy Unit at the Finnish Patent and Registration Office, which is the Finnish Business Registry Authority. Hey, Minna. This unit is responsible for coordinating and steering the real-time economy ecosystem development and its public-private collaboration in Finland. Minna led the Finnish real-time economy program through the period 2021 through 2024, which contributed to the objectives of the Finnish government program on moving towards a real-time economy. It was based on cooperation between public and private sectors. Minna worked as the Finnish national team lead in the Nordic Smart Government and Business Program. She has experience in various management, development, and project work from several Finnish government agencies. Minna, thank you for joining us. And we also have John Turner. John leads XBRL International, which is the not-for-profit standards development organization behind XBRL, the Business Reporting Data Exchange Standard. John works with regulators, governments, and the private sector to help the shift from a paper-based to a data-centric reporting paradigm. He's been involved in XBRL in many capacities since 1999. Since 2017, he's been focused on the role that mandatory digital statutory disclosure will play in the sustainability sphere. Before his current role, he was the CEO of Core Filing, an XBRL software firm, and before that, led the global XBRL activities of KPMG. Before that, he worked as a prudential regulator, running offsite surveillance and leading the revamp of data collection systems at APRA in Australia. John's a passionate advocate for the pragmatic use of standards to enhance reporting, and with the staff of XBRL International, works with the consortium's members and leading regulators around the world. He's based in Oxford in the United Kingdom and holds degrees in law and arts from the University of Queensland with majors in computer science and government. Thank you, John, for joining us. And I am going to go ahead and put my video on here. And we're going to go straight into the program. I'm going to stop sharing because we're just going to have a conversation with our speakers today. Okay. So with that, I just want to jump straight into, our starting questions. And I think I'm going to start first with John. And John, let's get a sense for what is standard business reporting? What exactly does that mean?
Thanks very much, Michelle, and hello, everybody. I hope you're having a good day. So I recognize there are some people on this call that are probably quite familiar with the idea of SBR, but for others, this will be a brand new concept. Everybody is, I think, familiar with the idea that a wide range of economic and policy activity within any country can only be managed by different parts of government with an awful lot of information. So a lot of agencies seek information from businesses across a very wide group of areas. They seek that information in numerous ways, and traditionally they haven't necessarily done so in an especially coordinated fashion. Some of that information has a tendency to involve quite a lot of overlaps. Some of it is unique to a particular agency. But it was with sort of an analysis of those issues, those business problems, not for government agencies, but for businesses that have to conform to different reporting requirements, that initially a couple of governments in the Netherlands and Australia started to look at this idea of what could be done to better coordinate the process of collecting information. Now, that can clearly be done in a number of ways. At one level, it's possible to utilize what's often termed a single window. Let a business provide all the information that needs to go to a range of agencies, send it to one place, and that information can be distributed across to those different agencies. In practice, because of particularly privacy constraints and legislative controls around the manner in which information can be consumed and shared. That's often quite difficult. But the other and perhaps more impactful approach to standardized business reporting, and the clue is in the name, is the idea of getting the agencies to collaborate and coordinate between themselves with input from a broad group of stakeholders, including affected industry, seeking to rethink data definitions such that we minimize to the maximum extent possible all of those areas where definitions are similar but not quite the same. And that idea of similar but not quite the same is a real problem for corporates. The costs of preparing information that goes to government can only really be considered as a pretty substantial burden on business, but equally, almost every business owner appreciates that government agencies, regulators, market authorities need to receive information. In many cases, they're republishing that information. That information builds trust. It builds aggregate economic information. It builds a range of other data that really the country runs on. So it is vital that government agencies receive a huge amount of information. But what can be done to rationalize and simplify that? So in a nutshell, that's the idea behind SBR. It's a pretty bold concept. It has implementations in a number of areas around the world, and we'll come back to some of those. But it is kind of obvious, to my mind at least, that if we're thinking about what can be done to enhance productivity in an economy, what can be done to simplify the process of doing business and making doing business a simpler thing for entrepreneurs right across a country, that this is an area where agencies can collaborate, can put their heads together. Sometimes that's a difficult process, but coming up with areas where overlaps can be removed and data definitions can be harmonized and simplified. Sometimes that's an administrative activity. Sometimes it involves some legislative work. But that process is an incredibly positive thing to do for government agencies. They're really helping people in the community and the businesses in their community in doing that work. Having said that, one of the challenges that the leaders of all of these projects that we've encountered around the world always face is at some point there's a decision. Maybe it comes to the cabinet in some countries, maybe it goes to some other central clearing agency or clearing decision-making group, a Ministry of Finance or the like. And all of those agencies have to sort of answer the question, well, what's in it for me as an agency? And perhaps the slight challenge for SBR is that there isn't necessarily huge benefits directly to the individual agencies, but there's huge benefits to all of the businesses that they interact with. And making that business case is a critical part of that story. So perhaps that's a lengthy answer to a simple question, Michelle, but hopefully that makes sense about to the people on this call about the background and idea of what SBR is.
Great, thanks, John. And then, I think we're all aware that the SBR is based on using XBRL primarily. So I'm going to sneeze here. Sorry, perfect timing. Are there other standards involved, and why XBRL? Could other standards be used to support an SBR program?
So the SBR programs that exist around the world to date have made extensive use of XBRL, but they also use some other standards. Mm-hmm. I guess the fundamental point that SBR programs are trying to get at is simplifying definitions. And one of the unique features of the XBRL standard is that the definitions themselves are machine readable. It's not just a case of providing a PDF document with some descriptions about what to put in certain fields. It is a machine readable framework that different software can consume and utilize in different ways. And those taxonomies don't just provide a description of what to put in a field, but they provide data constraints and they provide relationships between different concepts. So it's sort of ideally placed to do that. And of course, it is used very heavily by financial regulators, by securities regulators, and by business registrars around the world for the acquisition of a core set of information, the financial statements, and increasingly sustainability data in some parts of the world. That information must be signed off by the C-suite, must be signed off often by audit committees. A lot of it is subject to independent assurance. It is very high quality information, and that has proved a useful starting point for some some of these projects. Other standards that get used are things like e-invoicing standards, where there's information being acquired at a transactional level. Standards around identity, so things like the LEI are very important in some contexts, but these are sometimes done in different ways. But and then there are some technical standards around the mechanisms through which information is exchanged, the digital security mechanisms that are chosen. Those kinds of standards are also part of the SBR framework. Could you use other standards? Absolutely. What's relevant in your economy. To date, XBRL has proven a very useful part of that process, but it's just part of that process.
Great, thank you. And you talked a little bit about agencies and a lot of the benefit really going to the companies. What would you say is the biggest challenge from an implementation standpoint for any government, regardless of territory?
So I'm going to give you a piece of really ancient history, which is part of very early in my career working with this kind of information. I was responsible for collecting information about the prudential performance, the safety and soundness performance of financial institutions across the Australian economy. And we needed to change our systems. They were old and they didn't work very well, so we were replacing them. And as you'd expect, we went round to our largest banks and said, so guys, we're thinking about doing this, and at a technical level, we're going to do such and such. And we got absolutely blank looks. And we were sort of, well, if you don't care about these sort of technical things, what do you care about? Oh, we care about the fact that we have to provide you, the prudential regulator, with this information, and there's a lot of it. We have to provide the central bank with this information, and there's a lot of it. And we have to provide the statistics agency this information, and there's a lot of it. And those definitions are not quite the same. So we have 3 different silos and 3 different processes for providing all of that information. So please, can you fix that? So we got together with those agencies, scratched our head, and then spent some time getting some legislation to allow us to collect information on behalf of those other 2 agencies. But we also spent 3.5, 4 years every Friday afternoon working through definitions. And the reality is that when you're bringing professionals from across agencies and across different parts of government, they've all got different backgrounds, different professional qualifications, and different understanding of data. And they've got different names for data. It's just nomenclature. So getting to the bottom of all of that, agreeing what those definitions are, understanding that, this thing over here and this thing over here really are the same, turns out to be, a fairly lengthy exercise. And it's a very important one. And the better you're able to do that process, the more you achieve. But I think that is the biggest challenge that all of these agencies have had to address. But I would add one other thing, which is that there needs to be some glue that binds it all together. So this needs to be a centrally agreed program. It needs to be something that people are committed to because they're trying to improve the way that business can get done in their country. They're trying to reduce burden. They're trying to improve the conditions for business in their environment. That might require, central leadership. It might require some sort of legislative or other kind of program framework around it. And it requires support of a broad range of stakeholders. It needs not just the agencies to be involved, but it requires the companies themselves to chip in with their ideas and their perspectives and pointing out that, well, actually this thing and this thing we've always assumed they're the same. So, maybe you should as well. And then the intermediaries, the assurance providers, the software vendors, the data providers, and other people that are using information up and down that supply chain, they all really need to be part of this story. So these are challenging projects in that sense, really tangible, really important, huge numbers associated with the kinds of savings that can be provided. But it requires consistency, it requires purpose, it requires some leadership. And, it's difficult to get a small business excited about the fact that, oh, well, currently you have to provide these 3 numbers, and now in the future you're going to be able to provide 1. Okay, well, that's going to save me, 25 minutes twice a year. Yeah, but there's millions of businesses that this impacts. So when you multiply that time out, then it really creates an impact. But all of those things are need to be kept in mind as these programs go into effect.
Great, thank you. So now, Minna, I'd like to turn to you and we've heard a little bit about the fundamentals of SBR and kind of how it works in general. Let's focus a little bit on the program in the Nordic countries. So just to kind of to start off, why did the Nordic countries decide to team together to investigate bringing SBR to the region?
Yes, and hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. So all 5 countries, Nordic countries, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden, have quite ambitious digital policies, and the digitalization goals are very similar in these countries. And all these countries wanted to simplify the processes of small and medium enterprises and help them to do their business smoothly, also cross borders, and grow. And our common vision in Nordic countries was that to create value for small and medium-sized enterprises by making real-time business data accessible and usable for innovation and growth across the region. So the goal was really to simplify the lives of SMEs and to create new business opportunities and growth based on these structured economic data and of course support more competitive region in the Nordics. And the core idea is that the structured and standardized business data can be shared automatically and thereby replace the burdensome manual handling of data exchange, and there is a common will to develop things so that many different stakeholders will benefit from the solutions and the same data. And in the background, the Nordic prime ministers had a stated ambition to make the Nordic region the most integrated region in the world, and they set the vision for the Nordic region to be the world's most integrated and sustainable region. And the Nordic countries are some of the most digitalized countries in the world, I would say. But however, if the digitalization efforts are not coordinated across countries, so the national digitalization efforts can create even barriers for cross-border trade. So there is a need to coordinate and develop digital infrastructure and digital solutions that are interoperable and also, of course, cost-effective to use across businesses and systems and countries. So the Nordic Smart Government and Business Program focused on identifying those areas where national policies align and can benefit from this cooperation with these 5 countries. And this program has applied a centralized model where cooperation is focused around these common areas, and national implementation. We leave the parts of national implementation up to the countries themselves, and well, this has resulted a pragmatic working model where cooperation has been really to focus on the areas that hold the most Nordic added value, and leaving others for national implementation. So yeah, teaming together, I would say that allowed Nordic countries to develop these interoperable and cost-effective and secure solutions for real-time business data that work also across borders, and that decrease administrative burdens from companies, and improve transparency and support also our EU-level digitalization efforts.
Okay, and when you decided to get started, like what were the initial steps? Because it seems like you guys put a very big program in place with lots of pilots, and that led to some of the successes that you're seeing. So tell us a little bit about the initial steps to get started.
Yes, well, in 2016, the program was launched by the business registry authorities of the Nordic countries. So were only business registry authorities in the first time, but then the Nordic innovation was co-financed of the program, and this Nordic Innovation is an organization under the Nordic Council of Ministers, and the organization's aim is to make the Nordics a pioneering region for sustainable growth by promoting this entrepreneurship and innovation and competitiveness in the Nordic business, so that we get that funding, of course, and then the early steps focused on identifying shared interests, and we set a roadmap for interoperability in certain key areas like trust services and e-documents like e-invoices, e-orders, and e-receipts, and of course this reporting and also the technical infrastructure for secure data exchange. And then in 2020, on September, the Nordic ministers of business and industry, they approved and launched this roadmap for realization of this Nordic smart government and business ecosystem, and they decided to continue their investments to this program. And then 2021, the program moved into the implementation phase, and then we had already 21 government agencies from different Nordic countries, and I would emphasize also that collaboration with the private sector has been really a cornerstone of the initiative. So we had numerous a lot of pilot projects and dialogue with SMEs and service providers and different kind of stakeholders. But yeah, that was the path, I would say.
And over the course of time, there are some specific programs that you guys initiated. Can you tell us a little bit about those programs and what each of the goals were for those programs? Because there's so many facets to this to the Nordic program. It'd be interesting to hear about each one, like Born Digital and Business Document and other programs.
Well, yes, we in our Nordic program we organized work into 4 solution areas or working groups, and one was digital business documents and product information, and the core idea of this working group, digital business documents and product information, was to replace manual and PDF-based trade processes with these structured and standardized data in e-documents that work seamlessly across systems and borders, and they also enable automation of processes and better high data quality and lower costs. And this digital business documents and product information working group implemented several pilots regarding these e-invoices and e-orders and e-receipts and e-catalogs, and we used also the Peppol network there. And this working group also developed standards, including also environmental data in documents, and yes, they developed that, and also studied and implemented also pilots to automate cross-border VAT reporting. So this was the reporting part. So that was the one of the working groups. And then second was open accounting and simplified reporting. And the idea of this working group was to standardize and simplify financial reporting across the Nordics, so that financial reporting is more transparent and comparable and reusable across borders, so that SMEs can reduce their costs of reporting and compliance. And this working group developed, for example, a Nordic vocabulary for financial statements, so that businesses and investors and banks can easily compare financial data across countries. And that enables, of course, easier benchmarking and for example, loan assessments and structured reporting across borders. And that support SMEs to reduce duplicate reports and enable smoother access to financing and investment opportunities also. So that was the open accounting and simplified reporting working group. And then the third working group was Born Digital. And the core idea of this working group was to make the entire business cycle digital first, so that businesses can operate digitally from right from the start. So the goal was that have digital services from the start, also across borders to the companies. And this includes secure digital IDs that also work across borders, and so that businesses can handle their official business digitally, and businesses are integrated with public authorities via APIs. And there are digital government services available for the whole business life cycle when they start, run their business, and also end of the life cycle of company. So this helps businesses live and of course automate processes and reduce the administrative burden from companies. And this work was connected to EU level initiatives like the Digital Identity Wallet and EU company certificate. So the goal was to ensure interoperability also in the EU level, of course. And yeah, this working group implemented also pilots with cross-border digital identity, so this e-wallet, and also the company registration. And these pilots showed that, for example, that the companies in one Nordic country can establish a company in another Nordic country online using this mutual digital ID recognition. And this working group made also development to ensure that company data is structured and high quality and reusable in digital processes across the Nordic region. And of course in the EU level also. And this working group developed semantic models and APIs to give companies these cross-border access to register data in the Nordics. And well, this Born Digital working group pilots proved that companies can be registered online across borders using these secure digital IDs, and also that Nordic registry data can be made interoperable for EU-wide use. So this company certificate. And also that APIs and semantic models enable this automatic and secure and real-time data sharing. So these were from this working group. And then we had a fourth working group that was reliability and data quality. And the core idea of this working group was to make business registry data high quality and interoperable and accessible through a common Nordic API. And that means, of course, less manual administrative work and higher trust and lower cost when developers and SMEs don't need to integrate with multiple national systems and cross-border readiness. So that same company data model works in many Nordic countries and aligns also with EU level plans. And well, the working group, so it developed a common Nordic API to provide the standardized business registry data. And that is one harmonized API to access company information from Nordic business registries. So of course, this improves access to high quality and machine readable company information. So these were our working groups in Nordic program.
Pretty ambitious. So over the test period, when all these pilots were being conducted in the different working groups, what were the results? Has it been successful? And how do you define success? What are your criteria for success through these programs?
Well, yes, I would say that it was largely successful. The program has been a cooperation laboratory where national experts have worked closely together in these working groups to find out how to best implement interoperable solutions that can work in all Nordic countries. And the program has, I would say that it made significant progress in the field of digital business documents and also automating cross-border transactions and developing a common Nordic financial vocabulary. And also improving access to high quality business data. And the success criteria, they were set in the program's roadmap milestones. And the program reached 6 fully achieved roadmap milestones, and we have 8 milestones. So out of 8 roadmap milestones, 6 were fully achieved by the end of the program. And I would tell some examples. So we had a roadmap milestone that high adoption of digital business systems among SMEs in Nordic countries, and it's about 80% in Nordic countries. And Norway and Denmark made this digital bookkeeping mandatory for all businesses. So they set legislation also. And then another was the cross-border interoperability. And our pilots proved that SMEs can send these e-invoices and e-orders across borders, and they can establish a company digitally in another Nordic country, and they can use common APIs to access these business registry data. And then we have had, for example, we had roadmap milestones regarding digital invoices and what is the volume of digital of using digital invoices in the Nordics. And the target was 80% by 2024. That was partially met in some countries, for instance in Finland. the volume is very high already. So we have over 90% digital invoices, and for example, in Iceland, it's 75%, and so this was, but in some countries it was a bit lower. But yeah, this was also quite good good result, and also progress made toward becoming the most integrated region through these APIs and digital identities and automated e-documents and these vocabulary that helps the interoperability between countries. So yeah, I would say that it was largely successful, and then the program has been focused on developing and testing common standards and formats that are the core framework conditions. And SMEs and system providers have been involved in testing these pilots, which has been an efficient way of validating of these benefits and obstacles also of these operational models, as well as of course the cost of implementation. So it was very crucial that we had these private sector enterprises and service providers in collaboration with agencies. Yeah. Yep.
And what would you say out of all the work that you've done, what are some of the primary lessons learned that might be helpful for other governments who may be considering this?
Well, lessons learned. Yeah. Of course, this our cooperation adds real value, as John said, that it's really it's cooperation is the key here.
Okay.
So yeah, so I would say that that no single country or market actor could have delivered interoperable cross-border solutions alone, but we had to have this tight cooperation and joint pilots and working groups. Of course, allowed pooling of expertise and alignment also with EU level initiatives, and maybe another was to focus on cross-border use cases, because so that it's the interoperability, and so it's really a key here. And of course, in our case, the EU alignment is critical, of course, so that there are many EU legislation that should align national and regional digital strategies and implementation. And yeah, and of course the data quality and semantics are foundations. So without these structured, standardized, high quality data, the automation won't work, and we cannot automate the processes without this structured data. Yeah, and well, of course, also keep the focus on core infrastructure and what is the how to achieve these common infrastructure and interoperable infrastructure. Yeah.
Okay. Great. That's very helpful. That's really, great to hear about the Nordic programs, and let's talk a little bit about the Netherlands, because that's a program that's been in place for a while. And John, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about, like, why did the Dutch government decide to test out this program? John, you're on mute.
I apologize.
Okay.
Schoolboy error. So I think this goes back to 2004, 2005. There was some comparative analysis done in the Netherlands, and they found that the administrative burden that was being imposed on Dutch companies was higher than some of their peers, and they scratched their heads and thought, well, what can we do about that? And I think really from that, the SBR framework was born, emphasizing what Mina has said. Collaboration was always important in that context. They started off with 4 agencies. It was really led by the Ministry of Finance in that country. The tax administration was involved, as was the Chamber of Commerce or Business Registrar, as was Statistics Netherlands. All of these different agencies had sort of crossover data collection requirements. They almost from the outset had input from the private sector, both corporations and financial institutions, so non-financial institutions, and then financial institutions, as well as some representative groups and the accounting profession. And that ranged from sort of strategic advice and encouragement and publicity all the way down to very, very practical things about specific definitions. They had a couple of other groups that I think are really important in that context. They had sort of formal involvement of the banks from an early stage, and I'll come back to the reason for that in just a second. They also worked with the software vendors and intermediaries, particularly on some of those technical things that, again, that Mina was describing are so important to the success of the Nordic program. Similar story in the Netherlands, but they leveraged a centralized group which the Dutch government has called Logius, which is a sort of a central IT function to do some of the data interchange work and defining the way their APIs worked. And that has been very successful over the years, not least because it could be copied. So one of the successful things in the Netherlands has been that as the government agencies started to share their definitions and share their taxonomies or dictionaries for use for sharing terms, the banks could use that information as well, but they couldn't necessarily use the same infrastructure for collecting that information. So they actually created parallel versions of that infrastructure that is proprietary to the banks. That information flows from SMEs to banks, does so just as if you're providing information to your regulator or to the Chamber of Commerce. The marginal cost to the company of providing the information twice is incredibly low. They don't have to do anything different. They're just logging into a different place. And the banks have made extraordinary use of that information, both in terms of simplifying and enhancing things like loan applications, but also ongoing monitoring of the financial health of SME customers. And indeed, that all filters into capital allocation and capital adequacy calculations. So the banks themselves can be running more efficiently. So that's kind of a knock-on effect of that kind of early digital collaboration that the Dutch government coordinated across a number of actors. Central to that process was what they called the National Taxonomy Project or Dutch Taxonomy Project, and it's called the NTP. And that was a group looking at these definitions and agreeing, well, this is very, very close. Is this something that we can just agree needs to be the same? Is this something that can't be changed without changes to some legislative instruments or indeed some laws? They worked through that process. They sort of differentiated between normalization of definitions. There's no need for legislation to get involved. And then more formal harmonization, which does involve some sort of legislative structures. The original purpose of the project was, gee, it costs too much to do business in this country. What can we do to lower that cost? They've been very successful in lowering those costs.
Okay. And one of the things I thought was interesting about the program in the Netherlands is that they started with small entities and, typically like what we see in the United States is when, let's say when the SEC rolls out a program, they start with the largest entities because they're considered to have the highest resources. And how was the Netherlands able to roll this program out to small entities, and then why did they choose to do that?
Two reasons: bang for their buck and intelligently leveraging the networks. So bang for the buck, if you can impact hundreds of thousands or millions of companies and lower the cost to them by a small amount, then your overall impact is going to be very high. And then intelligent use of networks, well, just as is in the case in the United States, and I know this is not necessarily the sort of the first cabs off the rank necessarily for the FTTA in the United States, but SMEs have a tendency to use the same dozen or so pieces of software to produce their accounts, to do their e-invoicing, to do a range of things. And that process of engaging those software vendors from the beginning, kind of making it clear that, if you want to stay in this game, you're going to have to be able to interact with these APIs. You're going to have to be able to produce reports in this format. Meant that the impact on SMEs themselves was incredibly minimal. They might have got an update to the software, but now they can press a button and that information can go off to 3 or 4 agencies instead of it going to one, or indeed it can go to 4 different agencies or an agency in 4 different banks 5 different times, but the cost of doing that isn't very high because you've collected it once and you've sent it to the same place, to different places. Both of those things work. The real value is in streamlining those interfaces and streamlining those definitions, rather than necessarily needing a single place for that information to go to, if that makes sense.
Okay. And what would you say are the biggest success factors in the Netherlands?
I think, and I'd encourage people on this call to go and have a chat to our colleagues in the Netherlands. They'll be back from holiday soon. But I think that they would all concur that ongoing collaboration, which does require some centralized leadership and some centralized intention, has proven very important in that context. I think this is not a case of set and forget. You can do huge amounts of work to harmonize and simplify data definitions and then see that sort of fade away as different agencies say, oh, well, I want to change this, I want to change that, I want to change that. Change is reality. The only thing we know about reporting and data collection is that things change over time. But that ongoing collaboration really turns out to be important. I think that the Dutch initiative have really focused on the information supply chain. They call it, they call this whole process a challenging the chain, because we used to have these different processes. What can we do to streamline that and rethink the way we do that? And I think a lot of people over an extended period have worked together to make sure that that is the new way of defining requirements for reporting, defining changes to reporting, and understand and appreciate that even though it would be easier for a single agency to go and say, well, I'm going to make my own rules, collaborating with their colleagues so that those areas where there is overlap can be harmonized and normalized makes an enormous amount of difference to your economy as a whole. And, gives the external reporting teams in big companies and in financial institutions, it means that they've got more time to sleep, because they have to do less work in capturing and recapturing all of this similar but not quite the same information, if that makes sense, Michelle.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like, from both experiences, it sounds like cooperation and collaboration are kind of key areas of focus here. So, So my next question really for both of you is, what do you see as similarities between the programs in the Nordic countries and in the Netherlands? And in a minute, maybe you want to start off with that one.
Yes, I think that the programs have very similar goals and similar building blocks also maybe, and of course these collaboration. So this public-private collaboration has been a key in I think that in both programs. Both have been developed with agencies and business registries and tax and statistics authorities and other authorities and software vendors, and they all work together. And of course, this goal of using the same data or same definition, same data for many purposes. That's quite same. And of course, this basic that we have the data in structured, machine readable format, and the reporting and whole chain can be there is the structured data in the whole chain, and different actors can use the same structured form data in their own purposes.
Great. And John, do you have any thoughts on that?
Look, I'd echo what Mina has said. I'd add a couple of things. I think even from across the pond, it is extraordinarily obvious that regulatory agencies and public sector authorities in the United States are under extraordinary pressure to deliver better outcomes for business and for citizens. Yes, it's slightly odd to say, you know what, we're going to save money by collaborating with our peers, but you can do exactly that and win the plaudits of those businesses, and hopefully from a political level, because the effort to collaborate, the effort to work out what is unnecessarily overlapping. It is absolutely the case that there are different agencies with different reporting needs, and those things need to be respected. But it is also the case that nobody needs 19 different definitions for full-time employee. And that's the kind of thing, and lots of other individual definitions, which can be coordinated and can be improved. And that will create very significant benefits to business overall. But I wouldn't lose sight of the fact that there are benefits for agencies as well. If there is a single version of the truth coming out of corporates, if that is machine readable and structured and can be consumed immediately by your own systems, and the data quality mechanisms have been baked into that process to ensure that that information is reaching you in a better state than it ever has in the past, then you're getting higher quality information than you might have in the past. You should be able to rely on that information with greater confidence than perhaps you have in the past. And as we've seen in a lot of projects of this nature, one of the side effects of enhancing the definitions, enhancing the data flows and the manner in which the information goes from A to B in terms of the actual technical processes, if those enhancements and harmonizations mean that you get the information faster. And we are living in a world where we all need high quality information to make decisions with, and this process is a very effective way to improve the building blocks, the raw materials that you have to make decisions with. So, you might be looking at this through a US lens and thinking, oh, well, wait a minute, we're dealing with a much bigger end of town and we're not dealing with SMEs. That's true, but or it may be true, or it may be the starting point. But the big end of town has vastly more data reporting obligations than SMEs. There is a lot more that can be resolved, a lot more that can be improved. It does take collaboration. It does take you have to come up with what your approach to consistent and long-term leadership in that space is going to look like. And it does require collaboration across the private sector. And I think that that collaboration itself is something that many agencies will get a lot out of, because you'll get exposed to some of the innovations that occur in the private sector, some of the thinking that exists in the private sector, and indeed that works both ways. So everybody understanding what everybody is trying to do is extremely helpful in this function. So I hope there's a few ideas that might resonate and might be of interest. At XBRL International, we're certainly big fans of these SBR initiatives. The idea that we can just make business better by making information flow more easily just makes sense.
Great, thank you. I want to thank you both so much for sharing your insights today. John Turner, XBRL International, and Mina Rintala from the Nordic countries real-time unit. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And thanks to all of our attendees today. I also want to mention that John brought up the program, the banking program in the Netherlands. That's kind of an offshoot of their SBR program. And we're going to have an individual who is kind of at the heart of that program. He's the Chief Technology Officer from SBR Nexus, which is the program that was started by the 3 major Dutch banks. And he's going to be speaking to us in September. We have the timing is not yet finalized, but we'll come back to you all with the timing for that. But that'll be really interesting to hear how they've taken the government program and expanded on it for banks to make it much more efficient for them to obtain information from their customers. So thank you again, and hope to see you on our next webinar.
Thanks very much.